For years, most of us used Windows the same way we used air or electricity. We didn't question it. It was always there, quietly running in the background, powering our documents, games, browsers, and media. But something changed over the last decade, and by 2026, millions of people around the world have started to ask a question many thought they'd never utter. Why am I giving control of my computer away to someone else? Windows 10, once familiar and stable, started to feel bloated. Windows 11 doubled down on forced updates, telemetry in the background, and increasingly intrusive features that many users never asked for. The end of official support for Windows 10 pushed this shift into overdrive, leading to a wave of people looking for alternatives. That search for alternatives has taken many users down unexpected paths, and one of the most popular destinations is Zorin OS 18, a Linux distribution designed specifically for people who are coming from Windows or Mac OS environments. Zorin OS doesn't pretend to be for hardcore developers or server administrators. It's built for everyday users who want an operating system that feels familiar, works reliably, and prioritizes privacy and control over constant corporate updates. In fact, Zorin OS 18 was downloaded over 2 million times in a matter of months after its release, with around 75 to 78% of those downloads coming from people switching from Windows, a clear indicator of real interest among frustrated Windows users. Zorin OS 18 was officially released on October 14, 2025, and it is built on the long-term supported base of Ubuntu 24.04 LTS, which means it will continue to receive security updates, bug fixes, and performance improvements until at least June 2029. This long-term support makes it a stable choice for individuals, families, and even organizations that want years of dependable use without the constant churn of feature updates. The OS itself is powered by the Linux 6.14 kernel, bringing better hardware compatibility, improved performance, and newer drivers for modern systems. One of the first things users notice after installing Zorin OS 18 is how clean and sleek the desktop feels. The default theme has been refreshed with rounded elements, a floating taskbar, and an updated workspace indicator that visually shows you which workspace you're on without confusion. This isn't just superficial. Design elements matter because a polished interface feels more comfortable, especially for people who have spent years in Windows. It makes the transition less jarring and helps users feel at home right away. It isn't just about looks. Zorin OS 18 introduces a powerful advanced window tiling manager that dramatically improves multitasking. By dragging a window to the top of the screen, a grid interface appears, allowing you to snap windows into place without needing to learn complicated keyboard shortcuts. You can customize these tiling layouts, enable smart suggestions, and tailor your workspace to your instincts. This system brings productivity closer to what you find in modern Windows environments, but with more flexibility and less clutter. The people who build Zorin OS clearly understand that modern computing is no longer confined to standalone applications. Many of us use web-based tools like Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, or other cloud services every day. Zorin OS 18 introduces a built-in web apps tool that allows you to turn any website into a desktop-like app. When you install a website with this tool, it shows up in your Start menu, just like native software. This means services like Microsoft Word Online, Excel, Teams, Google Docs, or even Photoshop Web can feel integrated into your desktop without keeping tabs open in your browser. That web app integration is paired with OneDrive support directly inside the Files app. Logging into your Microsoft account through online accounts lets you browse and manage your OneDrive files as if they were stored locally. For many Windows refugees, that ability to retain access to cloud-based files feels essential. Suddenly your photos, documents, and synced content feel right at home, even though you're using an entirely different operating system underneath. Performance is another area where Zorin OS shines. Thanks to its Ubuntu 24.04 base and newer Linux kernel, Zorin OS 18 feels snappy and responsive across a wide range of devices. Many users report that older laptops which struggled under Windows now feel lighter and faster under Zorin OS, with quicker app launches and smoother multitasking. This is partly due to Linux's efficient handling of system resources and partly due to Zorin's prioritization of performance over unnecessary background services. But what about software compatibility? One of the biggest fears that hold people back from switching to Linux is the idea that their favorite Windows programs simply won't run. In Zorin OS 18, this concern is addressed on multiple fronts. For starters, Zorin supports popular Linux app formats like apt, Flatpak, Snap, and AppImage, giving you access to a huge catalog of native Linux applications. But on top of that, Zorin OS includes enhanced Wine 10 integration, which significantly expands support for running many Windows.exe applications directly on Linux. What's more, Zorin's installer will often suggest the best way to run a Windows installer, whether as a native app, a web app, or through Wine, reducing the guesswork for new users. In practical terms, this means you can often run productivity apps, business tools, and even certain games directly on your Zorin OS system without needing to use a virtual machine. It's not perfect. Very specialized or highly protected software might still refuse to run, but for a huge percentage of mainstream applications, the experience is increasingly smooth. And the broader Linux ecosystem itself has made strides in gaming compatibility thanks to things like Proton and ongoing community development, making it less intimidating than ever to think about ditching Windows entirely for daily use. One of the smartest ways to transition to Zorin OS, especially if you're not ready to remove Windows entirely, is to dual boot both systems on the same machine. Dual booting lets you keep Windows installed while adding Zorin OS alongside it. When you power on your computer, you can choose which operating system you want to load. Zorin OS installer makes this process surprisingly approachable. It detects your existing Windows installation and offers a clean option to install alongside it, with a slider to choose how much disk space you want to allocate for Linux. This approach gives you a safety net, so you can explore Linux without losing access to Windows. Real user feedback from Linux communities in early 2026 reflects a wide range of experiences. Many users praise Zorin OS for feeling smooth, responsive, and easy to use, even on older hardware that Windows couldn't support effectively. Users frequently comment that Zorin OS just works, with reliable driver support for things like Wi-Fi, printers, and displays right out of the box. Some users do note occasional minor bugs or edge case glitches, which is normal for any major system release, but the overall consensus is that the OS feels stable and higher quality than many earlier Linux distributions. That said, not every experience is perfect. Some users have reported occasional animation hiccups or rare freezes, and a few have mentioned that highly customized workflows or niche hardware may still require troubleshooting. But for the vast majority of mainstream setups, Zorin OS delivers a consistent and polished experience that makes the transition far less frightening than in the past. What makes Zorin OS particularly compelling is not just the software itself, but the movement behind it. A decade ago, Linux on the desktop was niche, something enthusiasts used in home labs or for servers. Today, the momentum is real. With millions of installs and a strong base of users and developers contributing back to the ecosystem, Zorin OS feels less like an experiment and more like a mainstream alternative. Its growing popularity is part of a larger trend where users increasingly demand transparency, control, and privacy from their technology, something that many feel Windows no longer prioritizes. In conclusion, Zorin OS 18 in 2026 represents one of the strongest, most user-friendly Linux options available, especially for people transitioning from Windows or Mac OS. With its polished interface, deep compatibility layers, integrated web app tools, and strong performance across both old and new hardware, Zorin OS reduces the intimidation factor that once scared people away from Linux. It's not just a technical alternative. It's a practical, day-to-day operating system that respects your privacy, gives you control, and feels familiar without compromising on power. If you're considering a switch, dual booting is an excellent place to start, letting you explore Linux without losing access to Windows. And if Zorin OS meets your needs, you might find that your reliance on Windows slowly fades, freeing you from forced updates, constant telemetry, and unwanted background services. In a world where people increasingly demand autonomy from big tech ecosystems, Zorin OS 18 stands out as a modern, polished, approachable choice. Not just for tech enthusiasts, but for anyone ready to take back control of their computing experience.